of the research group Spatial Capacity Building in Belgium, Hasselt. What we do, we are part of the Faculty of Architecture, specialized in participatory design of spatial issues.
Hi, I'm Tamar. I am a design researcher working at the New Institute in Rotterdam, just on the street, and also a design writer and educator in the Design Academy Eindhoven.
I'm William. I work over there at Erasmus University. I am a scholar in public administration and political science. We just concluded a very big project on social innovation, so that's apparently why I have to sit on the stage now.
Hi, I'm Nurul. I'm from the Designers Politics group at UDelft, where we're looking into bringing politics back into design. I'm a PhD candidate there, and I'm looking at how spaces of protest are evolving in post-colonial settings.
And I think we will moderate together the discussions what we will take with the chair. I think probably the first question is really the one that you were briefed already before, so you know a bit what the discussion is going to be about. But I think the core question today is really why should people be drawn towards? Why should people will to participate? What's the trigger? What's new? Also, if you think about participatory democracy in the past, there's some new signs of weak signals, so something which is changing in the interaction between citizens and cities, local government, and so on. What do you think is the trigger, or what should be the trigger? And if you think about also the points that were raised by Ezio, we want to hear what you think about your participation in the city, but eventually also which are the risks connected, because this is something we never touched upon now we didn't touch upon now in our presentation, but there are some risks, and we are very much aware of it from within the design world, but also within the social innovation world. It was also in this presentation, of this beautiful presentation of Flor this morning, about the risk of being manipulated, that is disruptive actions can become part of the mainstream. So please, can you start argumenting on this, and then we keep the discussion together?
Okay, maybe I want to turn the question around a bit. 2 years ago we started a living lab, the other markets in the city of Genk, because we felt that we always involved people in projects. We asked them to participate, and we felt in a way that that wasn't right, because people in their daily life, they're not framed in projects. So what we started to do is the other way around. We started to reveal who these people are in a city outside of a project context. So who are people living in a city, what are their capabilities, where do they live, what are they concerned with? And we started building a big database of people, but also of materials, natural resources in a city. And once projects come up, we start inviting these people because of their capabilities, because of the place where they live, and so on. So they participate because they are just related to the issue naturally and outside of a project context. And by involving them also outside of these project contexts, we also feel that we grow their capabilities together with us and our capabilities in discussing spatial issues. Because you can invite people in to debate about a spatial issue, but they're not necessarily using the same language and so on. So also for them, they have to grow with you in discussing these kind of things. So in my opinion, there's a need for more spaces where these capabilities can grow more spontaneously and can get the time to grow and the debates to grow bottom up is a wrong word, but yeah.
Maybe I can say something a bit controversial. I think when it comes to democracy, one of the big dangers for democracy would be social innovation, I'd say. Because democracy, you can always debate whether democracy is organized the way it should be, but in essence, it's about distribution of common goods, right? So it's built on two concepts, exit and voice. So if you're in democracy, you can decide not to participate. You can leave it if you want, or you can raise your voice. Now, social innovation, by definition, provides, let's say, a third way outside of that exit and voice. Because you can take matters in your own hands, like you're just reflecting now. And there are numerous examples of people who take a beautiful initiative to take matters in their own hands. But the question, of course, and you raised it already a bit, which kind of people take that opportunity? And those people tend to be, that's what our research is showing, tend to be the more, let's say, the privileged people. So, again, back to democracy. I don't say that social innovation is per se a good or a bad thing, but for democracy, I think it's a bad thing or a dangerous thing.
So what you are saying is basically some people can take up these initiatives and then they just monetize it, right? And then only the privileged people can access this. It's like Airbnb, not everybody can use it, right? I agree with that, and I think that it is a problem which needs to be addressed. But then to say that it's a danger to democracy, I think is a bit harsh.
Well, you just met me. That's what I am.
I think speaking about the question, also this tension a bit from a design perspective, I think that the question that you've raised of a voice, for example, let's say traditionally that's been in a very binary sense. You can say yes or no in some way to future possibilities or to organization of resources and things in society. And in some way, I guess, in terms of design, traditionally participation was also in the sense like, did you buy it, did you participate in that aesthetic or material culture or no? I think in the past 20 years, for example, there has been a great change in the technologies used to achieve design, but also technologies used to achieve decision-making processes. And I think over time there is a growing literacy and capability of the non-expert compared to the expert designer, for example, or the expert politician versus the amateur politician, as I think we see very much in contemporary politics today. And while, yeah, obviously it's not that necessarily better conclusions come out of that, I do think there's somehow a growing affinity between the capabilities of the participant and the organizer or the orchestrator of the system, whether it's a design system or a general political system or social system.
But then it requires very good moderators as well, because I think there's a danger in thinking that these initiatives come spontaneously from very diverse groups. In my experience, also working for a long periods of time in the same city, is that you still need policymakers, community managers to find those groups in society who are not necessarily represented, because we as designers often romanticize the bottom-up initiative, but we still need some institutional networks to bring about this diversity in our design work.
Question? How do you want to do this participation and stuff?
Of course.
We need a moderator.
Thanks. So I'm definitely not a philosopher, but it seems that basically what everyone has been talking about is essentially an anarchist approach to politics, an anarchist approach to democracy. It's classical collective direct actions, people getting together to solve common problems that they have in a free, they choose free association to get together and do something. But I guess, so I'm interested that no one has kind of drawn really on that intellectual history and practical history of anarchism in practice. So I wanted to highlight that, and so I guess maybe the question of how do we get people to participate is, well, how do we turn people into anarchists? Which is a lot about empowerment for me, and I mean for me that's what democracy is to me. You know, I am an anarchist, and so I would say, yeah, I mean anarchism, which is what I think we're talking about to me. Of course, it's a challenge to democracy, and that's kind of the point. I would be really disappointed if what we were doing here wasn't really challenging the kind of mainstream conception of what democracy is. And to how to get people to participate in that is a really rich question, and I also think that there has to be a huge diversity of responses to that, because it's going to depend on people's conditions locally, it's going to depend on what that common sense is, what that common cause is, and for me it's going to be intensely local, and it's going to be about thinking about what are people's needs locally. That's my response.
I agree. It's I think the problem has always been the same. It's about making sure that the minorities, for example, can access the services, and you know, we have all these talks, we have all this participation, you know, these pop-up stores or whatever, but it's a very middle class thing, you know. I mean, the minorities cannot participate in this because they don't have the time to do it. You know, we have this thing, I think when Occupy started, right? I mean, who went to Occupy, right? Rich kids. Right, it's the same in Malaysia, you know. I mean, I talked to the organizer. It's like, okay, it's nice, you know, you go to this square and then you sit in the middle of the square every night. Who comes to these things? Like, oh, yeah, it's a middle class case because, you know, they have the time, they have the money, they don't have to worry about, you know, where the next meal is going to come from. So it's always a matter of making sure that the minorities can access this. The same privileges.
Thank you. I don't want to give my position now. I want only try to focus that I think, and I thank you, that you focus on a very important point. And the important point is the relationship in between what we have discussed, at least in the presentation that has been done by me and by Virginia, and the formal representative or whatever democracy. And I think that you're right. In some way, you can say that social innovation is an enemy of democracy. But I would say in the same way that equality is an enemy of freedom. Mm-hmm. And therefore, the strength of democracy for me, but it's not only my opinion, many people say, is exactly that it has the capability to keep together something that appears contradictory. So you're right when you say that in the very modest proposal, that because this is really the beginning of a discussion, we are introducing something new, or at least something that was never been seen in this way before, because it was not the need to do it. And it's the fact that in the dynamic of democracy, you need to guarantee, for instance, you're totally right, the right of the minorities. But at the same time, you need to feed the discussion with ideas. So my impression is that democracy can die, or because there is no organization that tries to give voice to everybody in the right to one vote, to one. But at the same time, if you have formally a good democracy that could work, but there are no ideas, or at least there are no ideas that are built in the way to be capable to start a conversation. Therefore, I think that the component that we were proposing is a component of what we know. So I said, we are in a very privileged place to discuss about things because you are all involved in social innovation and in networking for social innovation. So in which way what we are doing enter in the political debate? In my view, it enters, as I said, because not because it solves all the problems of the democracy. There should always also be the formal democracy that gives voice to everybody, but because it feeds the democracy with ideas. And in our case, it generates opportunity to discussion. It generates opportunity to break the hyper-individualization, the connected individualization, as somebody called it. And in my view, this is a very important for democracy, for the regeneration of democracy. The fact that many people that are active are middle class, yes, but everything could be, so who starts to do something is the one that had the time to do it. So I'm not so proud of this.
Please, where is the microphone?
Maybe other people want to respond first?
Can we, is it on this? And then you mind?
Yeah, sure.
Not working anyway. It's okay. I consider that saying that no, it's not working.
It is working.
Is this working? Okay. I think that saying that social innovation is related with medium class, I would like to highlight, for example, in the Brazilian context, this is quite, it depends on the concept of social innovation you have in mind. This is the first point. And for example, to say in a city as Rio de Janeiro, for example, when I came from, that social innovation is related with medium class is to frame social innovation in a very specific way, because we have a lot of cases of people in the favelas that have raised their voice in a way to use, for example, new internet connections or devices or mobile phones to have their own view about their own view of their own media, and using this the news from their own community, using this media to confront, for example, the mainstream media ideas about them, for example, and using also mobile phones to gain people access to their areas. For example, if favela is very dangerous, they use their mobile phones to say, oh, now it's safe to come, and increasing conversation between different parts of the city that is a broken city. So this is not something that came from the middle class, but they get organized to say, we can have a voice on that. So I would like you to take into account what you think about social innovation when you say social innovation is framed as medium class. I don't know in European, I don't want to discuss this in European context, but this is something that we need to take into account, and it's being very important to say they are able to do things also by their own way. Please, Saskia, what's in your queue? Yeah.
I actually wanted to make this, sorry, my name is Saskia Reising. I am part of the Transit project. And having worked a lot in the, so to say, global south, and I recognize what you say, but I also want to add something to that, that maybe even if it is a middle class thing in certain contexts, it might also be a signal that it's very important to have a middle class. And I think there are societies where the middle class is very small, and I think that this is also, say something, there is actually a transformative capacity in the middle class that we also need. So.
Yeah, can I? Sorry, I'm Erna. I'm a social innovator with a transnational network. Adding to
this, the question should also be, what is the democracy that we are talking about now? I don't know if you have ever seen the documentary made by Noam Chomsky, in which he reveals, it's called The Requiem of the American Dream. Please do watch it. There you can see that the democracy that we are talking about now isn't actually a democracy at all. So this middle class, if in some countries more middle class people are able to do social innovative projects, it's because they have the means. Yeah? So we should be very happy that they have the means to participate in this way in society. So yeah, I wanted just to add this. A lot of people want to say something.
Hello, my name is Gilda, and I am part of the board of Transit, and I have a couple of comments. I think democracy is as well taking care of the weakest component of the society. I think it is so, if social innovation is a danger for democracy, we should ask ourselves is how far social innovation is enlarging the caring for the weakest part of the society that is part of being democratic. And I think there is a gap at the moment in our societies where, you know, through the fiscal distribution of well-being and welfare, the rich part of the society is not taking care of the weakest anymore. So how is social innovation facing this is an important issue for me. Because, and the second comment I have is that participatory democracy can have an ephemeral aspect. And sometimes we are happy with this ephemeral aspect. Even what Carla, I'm sorry, has just said, we have mobile phones and we can mobilize the people. It is, there is an ephemeral aspect of this social innovation. And I think when Hannah Arendt refers to the administrative vision of the society, he's pointing to something that should be discussed if we want to go beyond the ephemeral aspect of social innovation, and it is building new legal bases. So it is, you know, it will be a very rewarding, individual rewarding result to be part of something without changing what is framing the society. And I think we have to go beyond this discussion. I think there is need to look at the administrative vision of the society and think if social innovation is tackling this issue. Because the administrative vision of the society is hindering going beyond, you know, tackling the substantial aspects of our behavior, our framing, our idea of possible or not possible. And I fully share the idea of Hugo Mattei and Fritjof Capra in their book on the nature of legislation, of the legislation of nature, the legal, and I think there is a contradiction in that, and we sometimes are in the trapped in the legal frames. And I think it is an important aspect of going beyond, you know, ephemeral consolation of being part of something.